Hey folks, my name is Melissa Hamilton. I use she, her pronouns, and I have the pleasure of being the Deputy Director over at the Leeway Foundation right now. I want to provide a visual description for folks on the call who may need that, particularly folks who are blind or low vision. Um, I'm a fat white masculine of center woman. I've got sort of pompadoured hair. I'm wearing gold rim glasses and a short sleeve chambray button-up shirt and a white t-shirt. I'm also joined by two really wonderful folks tonight. The first one is my colleague and Leeway's fantastic program assistant, Gabe Laredo. Gabe is in the background running tech, so thank you, Gabe. And I dare not try to introduce you, so please take some space.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Gabe. Thank you for your patience as we set up slides and music and everything. Yeah, happy to be here tonight and excited to get to know some of y'all as you progress through this space and this application process if you choose that. Yeah, Talie, do you want to give us an intro and maybe talk to us name, pronoun, and a little bit about your artistic practice?
Hi, my name is Talie. Pronouns she, her, hers. I am a singer, songwriter, and a journalist, Haitian American, and my music's mostly Haitian folk slash soul fusion, and my journalism is focused on the Haitian American community.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Um, Tali, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. You're gonna give some sage wisdom about how you walked through this application process last year. Tali did this beautiful thing last year, which was Tali received an Art and Change Grant application and a Transformation Award, which is a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it's a lesson in just going for it. Just apply for all the things and see what happens. So really excited that you can be here with us tonight. We're going to focus tonight on the Art and Change Grant. If at any point during our conversation, folks who are attending tonight have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat where myself or Gabe or one of us will answer them in real time. You can also learn more about the Art and Change Grant by going to our website and reading through the guidelines. That's leeway.org/ACG. You can read all about this grant opportunity in both English and Spanish, depending on your preference. Or you can just always reach out to us at info@leeway.org with any questions or concerns. Gabe and I's email are on the website. If you just want to go to a person that you feel comfortable with, go for it. We're an open door. Honestly, it is our job. We do not make these grant decisions. It's a community peer panel that makes these decisions. And so you are welcome to utilize us as staff however you want. We can read a draft, we can provide one-on-one applicant support. And in the next 2 months, in June and July, before the August 1st deadline, we'll have various one-on-one applicant support sessions that you can sign up for and get up to 45 minutes to an hour of support just around your idea, your application draft, or anything that you just might need help on. Um, if you're new to Leeway Foundation, I just want to give you a very quick overview. Leeway supports women, trans, and gender nonconforming artists and cultural producers living in the greater Philadelphia region who are working at the intersection of art and social change. Now, I know sometimes when you hear the phrase art and social change, it sounds like this big, heady concept. All it's essentially asking is that you're working and engaging with the community in some way, shape, or form around a social issue or area. Right. In terms of our funding region, we're in Philadelphia and we're Philly strong. As a Philly native, I feel serious about that. But we also fund the surrounding counties. And so that's Bucks, Camden County in New Jersey, Chester, Delaware, and Montgomery counties as well. And so if you know some incredible artists who are doing great things, or you are an incredible artist in one of those regions, Leeway grants are for you too. Our grants support individual artists. We don't typically support 501(c)(3)s or LLCs, but collectives are certainly welcome to apply, and we funded collectives before. We're serious about moving money on the ground to individual artists who are change makers in this city and beyond. Um, There's a great question in the chat. Can the one-on-one application support session be virtual? They certainly can. We have some virtual info sessions, some in-person info sessions, and we've got some virtual one-on-one support sessions that we can do through Zoom or Microsoft Teams. And then we've got some in-person one-on-one support sessions. And this year, that'll be in Liquid Gallery at the Crane Arts Building, if you're familiar with it, in July. So stay tuned and we'll drop that link. I'm going to drop that link in the chat right now so that you can take a look at all the sessions that are coming up and sign up as needed. Um, in terms of art for social change, Gabe, if you'll go to the next slide, that could be really helpful. So this is a little bit about Leeway. Just gave you that. The one big thing to know before we move forward here is Leeway is a trans inclusive organization, right? And so we support women, trans, and gender nonconforming folks, and we mean trans in the largest umbrella that it can contain. It's essentially anybody whose gender identity does not match the gender assigned at birth. And so when folks ask about Leeway, we're serious about trans inclusion, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts around that. Just want to make that clear. Next slide. So Art for Social Change. On this slide, you'll see an amazing grantee. That's Chayla, who recently got an Art and Change grantee working around sort of shutting down the Burke's detention center and doing some work around immigrant justice in Philadelphia. It's a joyful, timely photo, unfortunately, and some really incredible work that they're still doing. In terms of Art for Social Change, we just mean that it's art that has a vision and an intentional analysis. And it doesn't just impact yourself, but it impacts communities and tries to change them in some way, shape, or form. Essentially, Art for Social Change has community impact that ripples beyond yourself, right? It can raise consciousness. It can be a tool or strategy for organizing or movement building. It can challenge oppressions like racism or sexism, homophobia, transphobia. It can preserve traditional practices. It can create safe space or expression for a community or group. And it can do a whole lot more. Those are just a couple examples, not an exhaustive list. But the biggest question to ask yourself, especially as you're thinking about art for social change, is how does your art create action and how does it impact the community? Those are sort of the two biggest questions that run through all of Leeway's grant making that I think are really important to think about. How's your art create action and how's it impact the community? Um, Talie, you've been out here doing this work for a while now. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired you to apply and the process of applying and what got you started there?
Sure. So I think this was my third time applying for the Art and Change. Yeah, yeah, it was my third time applying for the Art and Change. Um, what inspired it? I mean, I like if you know me, you know that I'm always producing something, whether that's music or a blog or um, anything. I'm always making something. And then the through line of all the random things I do is Haiti and Haitian American community. Um, and so I applied for this one this time because I finally understood what a project grant was. Like,
Hmm.
I think I had a hard time understanding, and like, forgive me if I'm going to share my understanding of things. I had
No,
a
please go for it. That's why we asked you to be here.
Yeah, so like I had a hard time understanding what a project grant was. Because to me, I am an artist and I do work, and therefore my work is a project, you know? Whereas when I finally understood, like, oh, like a project that has a container and it has a beginning and it has an end, it has a specific goal. It is not like this abstract, ever evolving thing. That's not quite a project, right? And so when I finally was like, aha, I have a project. It happens on this date. It'll happen in this place with these people, for this
Hmm.
purpose. That's when I realized I finally had an art and change application. And that's why the previous ones didn't work.
Hmm. I love that. I mean, you're pulling up this like tension that exists, especially when there's just like grants, right? You're thinking about like, the difference between something like the Transformation Award, which
Mhm.
is a $15,000 award that is for work that's already happened, and the Art and Change grant, which we're talking about today, project-based grant, which is for work that's yet to be done, an idea or a project, right? You talked about it beautifully, like it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? Or some sort of time, even if it's a phase of a larger project. And I know this work that we're going to talk about for you tonight is a phase of a bigger project that's been happening before. It will probably happen after, but it is a contained project that you could talk about in the terms of this grant application. So yeah, thank you. Um, when you heard it, like, how did you hear about Leeway? I'm always curious.
Um, I don't remember. But I think yeah, I think like my mentor told me about it years ago.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure I first applied for Leeway when I was 22.
Come
I'm
through.
30, I'm 37 now. So that was the first, like I was fresh out of college and my mentor was kind of like, apply for this. You're like singing and blah blah blah.
Totally.
I didn't even know what a grant was. But yeah.
Real, so real. I kind of love meeting people when they're like, I don't know what a grant is. How do I do this thing? Or this is my first grant, or I've never gotten a grant. The Art and Change grant is a great first grant
Yeah.
for folks. It's a really good stepping stone. It's a really good place to try a new thing, deepen a practice that you've been doing already, and to have $2,500 behind it to help you do the damn thing.
I will say I've gotten grants for like things I'm a part of, but the Art and Change is my first grant for me as a musician,
I love that.
visual artist. Yeah.
I think that's like I learned a new thing about you today. That's
Mhm.
amazing. Thanks for sharing. Leeway funds all different kinds of artistic practices. We've got Talie with us tonight, a musician. Dare I say, sometimes you have a media practice too, in terms of a podcast, right?
I have an online magazine that
Hmm.
has a podcast, an online magazine, and a newsletter.
Totally. Amazing. And so we're seeing music and media reflected, but Leeway funds all different kinds of artistic practices, traditional and non-traditional, right? We fund visual artists, dancers, musicians, actors, media makers, but we also fund aromatherapists, DJs, hair braiders. I'm waiting for the moment a nail tech comes through. I'm like, please, if you know a nail tech for social change, please send them my way. We are going to make the most beautiful application for them.
I need to
Um,
tell my nail tech.
please.
I told
No.
her she's a healer. Yeah.
Nails for Justice, man. It's an idea, and people are certainly doing it out here in Philadelphia. Let's get this money for those folks. So we fund everything and the kitchen sink, is what I sometimes like to say at Leeway. If you consider your practice and art for social change practice and can articulate that in the application, we're going to lean in and go there with you. Okay. Grant decisions, as I said, are not made by Leeway staff, but they're made by a rotating peer review panel made up of artists and cultural producers that work in the community. There's always somebody on the panel who has applied and been through this grant application process before and can provide the context of I did this thing, it's hard or it's easy or XYZ, and advocate for someone who's been on the other end of the application process, not just the panel and the jury. Every single person who applies for any Leeway grant, Art and Change grant, or any other grant at Leeway receives feedback on their application if they want it. There's a little checkbox on our application that'll ask you if you want feedback or not. Most folks check yes, but even if you check no, you can call us 10 years later and still get your feedback. And we do that for folks from time to time. Feedback is a right, not a luxury. And if you spend your time and your energy applying for a grant, you should understand why and how the panel said yes or no to funding a thing, right? It's the least we can do. Uh, in terms of supporting a practice and making a grant application process generative. Talie, you got feedback on those grants, both the ones that you received and the ones you didn't. And so, would you mind sharing a little bit about your experience receiving panel feedback?
Yeah, my panel feedback was consistent across whether I got it or not, in that people wanted me to be able to articulate better impact, uh,
Mm,
which is, I find, the hardest part, because you don't want to be like, well, I'm out here changing lives,
mm,
everyone's better because I exist, it's like not easy.
yeah,
But these are the more abstract part of your work, especially if you're not someone like, if this is individual artist work, we're not talking about numbers. Like, I don't think
right,
I could have gone and be like, well, this song has this many streams. That's not what uh the panel wants to hear.
totally.
Um, and so yeah, it's a matter of figuring out how to pat yourself on the back, first of all, which we all tend to shy away from, especially women and trans people.
Hmm.
So we're kind of like, you have to be okay with bragging for a second and just think about, like, every single time someone has come up to you and been like, thank you for this work you're doing because this it did this for me.
Yep.
uh, I just didn't know how to put that into applications. I still struggle, but like, now I can say, like, we did this, which did this. I did this, which did this.
Hmm.
So you,
Hmm.
you don't want to just say I did this. You want to say I did this, which resulted in this. Both the tangible and the intangible.
Thank you for that. I mean, talking about and just thinking about your impact as an artist is hard.
Yeah.
Um, it's like swimming in the ocean, trying to write about swimming in the ocean. It feels really intangible, you know? And so, thanks for peeling the curtain back there. I think for the Art and Change Grant, one thing to think about is really like, what do you hope happens in the community as a result of this work, right? This is new work that you're proposing. And so you're really thinking about, what do I want the community to feel like or look like, or what action do I want to take place in this community after they experience my work or after we create this work together, right? Depending on what your project looks like or feels like or sounds like, you know? And so a great question to ask yourself is like, what do you hope happens in the community as a result of your work? A great question to ask, especially before you put your time and energy into doing the whole grant application. Next slide, please, Gabe. This is just who we fund. Before I skip and slide past this slide, I just want to call out Sweet Corey Bay, who is featured in this photo here. Sweet Corey Bay received an Art and Change grant a few years ago for a project called Soundtracking Freedom. It was basically a community-centered music and wellness project that was really about cultural expressions of blues, jazz, and gospel, and really was a full community effort in pulling together the community, the musicians, and the people to enjoy those that intersection of all that incredible music. And so, Sweet Corey Bay, really great grantee of ours and a really talented musician in Philadelphia. Next slide. Do you know Sweet Tally? I feel like you probably do. Yeah, small world. Um, for the Art and Change grant, it's a project-based grant of up to $2,500 for women, trans, or gender nonconforming folks and artists in the greater Philadelphia that fund what Talie was talking about earlier, an art for social change-based project, right? I'm gonna drop in the chat the guidelines that might be helpful to have. I know they're guidelines. I can't pretend to make the guidelines fun, y'all. They are guidelines for a grant. I mean, maybe they are fun to you. I'm not trying to yuck anybody's yum on this call. Um, and so, but they will give you all the technicalities of this application process. If the guidelines are intimidating to you, you open it up, you're like, whew, it's a lot of text, it's black and white. Just call Gabe or I or anybody on the Leeway staff, and we will break it down with you. We are here to help you in this process and demystify the things that feel intimidating about applying for a grant. This money is for you if you are working in community and engaging this region, okay? Especially around an art for social change-based projects. So don't let the guidelines or any grant application scare you for that process. Next slide. Deadline is August 1st, so you've got a nice chunk of change, couple weeks until that deadline now. We usually see between 70 and 90 people apply for the Art and Change grant, and then up to 25 projects are awarded. Those are pretty good odds, y'all. That's like a third of the applicant pool that receives funding some of the time, right? And so really, if you're thinking about that first grant, this might be a good first step, whether you're an emerging artist or you're just deepening your practice as a established one. Um, Eligibility for the grant, you need to be at least 18 years old. You have to currently live in one of our funding regions. Again, that's Bucks, Camden, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery, or Philadelphia County. You have to identify as a woman, trans, or gender nonconforming person, and you cannot be a full-time student enrolled in an arts degree granting program. You can be a part-time student enrolled in an arts degree granting program, but not a full-time student. And our only rationale behind that is that there is likely some coin at your university that you can harness if you are a full-time matriculated student. Um, the Art and Change Grant is for work you want to do. It's for work that hasn't been done yet or a new phase of work that you've been plotting out. And Leeway just doesn't fund retroactively. We're not going to fund, you're not going to receive an Art and Change grant for a project that you completed a year ago. You could build on that project that you completed a year ago, and that would be a solid grant here. And so, if you're already doing a project, think about what the new element or the new phase of the work is. Art and Change grants are great for that. I like to use like a film analogy here because making film and media, it costs a lot of money, right? And so, most of the time you can't make a film on $2,500, but you can do a phase of that filmmaking process. Maybe you're pulling together the community to do some story sharing that's going to inform the animation that you're going to make later. So really think about what that phase might be. And then if it is a phase of a larger project, be sure to talk about what this $2,500 request will be going towards, right? So that, you're not proposing a $100,000 budget and it's unclear to the panel, well, what will this $2,500 actually support? And so just keep that in mind as you go through. On this slide, you'll also see another Leeway grantee for the Art and Change grant, and that is, there's a few of them here. It's Sarah Trad, who got the Art and Change grant, and KT Abadir Mulali. They both got an Art and Change grant at different times, and the work that you see on this slide is for Batik Batik, and it is basically a film series and screening series that lifts up Swana populations and media. And so it's a really cool project. It's still actively going on today. And I highly recommend checking them out. Sarah Trad, KT Abadir Modali, and Batik Batik. So next slide. So we have these things on the Art and Change grant that we call social change intents, right? This is part of that art and social change intersection. And we ask that you identify at least one, but no more than three of these sort of issue areas or core buckets that embody the project that you're proposing to do. And so you'll see a list here, things like cultural preservation, decarceration, disability justice, immigrant justice, housing justice, LGBTQA social movements, trans justice and gender self-determination, and the list goes on, right? Um, we don't define these intentions for you, and there's space in the application, particularly in question number 3, that's going to ask what social change intent did you select and how does your art create some action around that area. Be really thoughtful around what you choose here, right? Um, because you're definitely going to see this later in the application in question 3. So if you choose feminism, the panel is going to ask later in the application, well, how does this project push forward feminism in some way, shape, or form, right? Talie, you selected cultural preservation and immigrant justice in your application. Can you talk a little bit about how you chose those two areas and how your project engaged with those social change intents?
Sure. So yes, I chose those two, but technically it's all of these things, honestly.
Mm.
Um, so the project is a concert that has yet to happen. It's happening in November.
Ooh.
That is connected to a documentary film that my sister is making, Luniz, who also got an Art and Change grant for the same project. Um, so the documentary follows we followed four Haitian women in Haiti, a midwife, a voodoo priestess, a healer, and a farmer, I believe. And then we found four Haitian American counterparts, first generation Haitian Americans in Philadelphia, a doula, a healer, a gardener, and basically we just like are putting them side by side and juxtaposing like what are the traditions we've kept, what are the traditions we've lost, what are the new traditions we're making as we migrate. And so, me as a musician, I'm scoring that with folk songs. I'm taking traditional Haitian folk songs and traditional Black American folk songs and making new ones just to tell the story of how we are changing and evolving and preserving what was given to us. So it is literally a project of cultural preservation,
Mm-hmm.
immigrant justice, because it is telling the story of Haitians and Haitian Americans right now in this current political climate. I mean, I have the application in front of me. I could read what I wrote.
Lean in. We're here for it. Give us it. Give us a
Okay,
piece of it, not the whole thing, you know?
sure. I said, with longstanding humanitarian political crises rocking Haiti alongside devastating natural disasters, many Haitians feel that their only solution is to leave the country. With that physical leaving also comes a leaving behind of culture and a profound sense of disconnection and displacement that echoes across the diaspora, a
Hmm.
painful break across the borders. This project aims to find a pathway for reknitting connections, exploring cultural means of finding ourselves within a new space.
Yes. There's a couple things, and thank you for reading that.
Mhm.
I love when folks lift up an example because you're like, it gets my gears turning more than like, here are the guidelines, you know? And so, um, I love that you root it, like you give the urgency right away. And you probably just read us three sentences, right? And you give us the urgency right away. You're like, there's been a longstanding political crisis, there's disconnection, right? And so the panel immediately understands the urgency for why this work needs to happen right now, right? And then you just are really clear and explicit. This project seeks to do X, Y, Z, right? Um, that is such a beautiful gift you can give to a review panel of just being clear and direct about what your project seeks to do, right? And so, for you, it was like creating these new pathways, right? And really preserving the traditions. Earlier, you said the traditions kept, lost, and learned while we migrated. Beautiful, like, way to summarize a very complex, multi-layered project that you describe in depth at other places in this application. And so it's a really beautiful way to describe your work and its intersection with cultural preservation and immigrant justice. Also, there's one thing I want to pull on that you said right when you started talking, when answering this question. You said, my project is all these things, right? When you look at these social change intents. And that's such a real reaction, right? You're like, my work is creating change around all these issue areas, right? Because for you, cultural preservation is likely racial justice, it's LGBTQIA justice, it's economic justice, it's feminism or womanism, right? And so that's why there's no definition around these things and why there's space in the application for you to describe it. There have been many people who have walked through this app and said, you know, racial justice for me looks like an intersectional thing, you know? But I want to make space, Tally.
My understanding is like don't necessarily think of these as like, oh, like what is the category that I fall under? I think of it more as like in what way am I going to tell the story to this panel? And so
Yep.
I'm these two things.
Beautiful. Great question. In what way are you going to tell the story to the panel, right? Um, Especially when you're being asked how does the art create action? You can say the art creates action around these areas in XYZ way. You know, beautiful. Um, Another thing, if you'll go to the next slide, Jean. Another thing that the application asks for is a short project description. Um, and this is just a 3 to 5 sentence describing the core of your project. Essentially, it's your elevator pitch, right? And a lot of people see this question and they're like, "Oh, it's just my summary," right? Sometimes I tell people to write the short project description after they think about answering the other questions because it's easier to find the core of it after you've thrown a lot of words onto the page and thought about it for a minute, you know? And so, Talie, your short description was really skillful. And it's one of the reasons why we have it on the screen today, right? Um, Essentially, in those 3 to 5 sentences, you want to talk about the what, the who, and the why of the work, right? What's the art form? Who's the work featuring? Or who the work is created for? And why are you creating it? Right? And so, Talie, would you mind if I just read your description for folks? Thank you so much. Talie wrote, Miwa, Haitian Creole for Mira, is a new musical visual project intertwining traditional folk songs from Haitian and Black American traditions, newly composed songs by me, Natalie Sarin, and both archival and new footage curated and created by Lunice Sarin, my sister. Retracing a collective lineage that spans generations of the Haitian diaspora, the work holds up the mirror of the title to everyday rituals of care and sacred rituals of ancestors and ask, how do we own our cultural inheritance in ways we name and don't name? So in that example, so good. Number one, in that example, we understand the art form, who's being featured in the work, and why the artist is creating it. In terms of the art form, you give it to us right away in the description. You tell us it's a musical visual project intertwining traditional folk songs and newly composed songs and archival and new media. Boom. Art is clear right from the get, right? You'd be surprised by how many people forget to talk about the art in the Leeway Art and Change Grant application. They know that Leeway is serious about the social change element, and so we get a lot of theory around the social elements of it, but the panel also really needs to understand what is the art at the end of the day. There's no work sample in this application. There's no portfolio link that you share. And so you really have to describe what is the art at the core of this work, right? So you tell them right away in the short description here. You also tell them who's being featured in the work. It's yourself and your sister and a collective lineage that spans generations of the Haitian diaspora. Really clear on who's being featured in the work. And then last but not least, you tell us why the artist is creating it. And you literally write to hold up a mirror to everyday ritual care and sacred rituals of ancestors and to ask the critical question, how do we own our cultural inheritance in ways we name and don't name? Damn, Tali, it was a good it's not even 3 sentences. It's 2 sentences. It's not even three, y'all. And so how did you boil it down into those two? Did it take you some time?
You know, I think like my sister and I have been talking about this project for a long time, and we have been explaining it to people, and and people have been like, "What?" You know? And so
Mm,
after like the 20th what, we were like, we need to figure out how to talk about this. Because every time we do it, they're like, "Are you trying to put all of Haiti in a jar and all of the Haitian diaspora in a jar?" I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds nuts." Um, so yeah, I don't know. It was a lot of just like chipping away at it was a lot there were a lot more sentences before. There were a lot
real.
more sentences. And there's just like a process of I mean it really helps that I'm an editor, but you know, when you're done blabbing, you know, my system is to yap as if I'm
Hmm.
someone, my friend. And then I look at it and I'm like, okay, about 79 of these sentences were not necessary. Uh,
Absolutely.
but I knew the how do we own our cultural inheritance in ways we name and don't name um,
Hmm.
is something that that's a sentence that has been at the core of how we talk about this. I mean, to be transparent, like we're applying for a lot of grants for this project.
Absolutely.
My number one rule when applying for grants is I don't rewrite anything that's already been written. And so as we have been getting grants, I see what's working, I see what's not working, I take
Yep.
from there. I think these are like 2 sentences from my larger narrative from the NEA grant we got and then was taken back.
Hmm. I love that. Pull that curtain back. You're like, look, we're seeing what language works and what language doesn't work, you know?
Copy and paste. Do not like
Absolutely.
it's a game and steal from yourself. Yeah.
Totally. Because there's answers, there's gems in the rubble there. Even if you have to rework a sentence, you can likely reuse, you know? Thank you for that. I really, really appreciate it. Um, there's also a section on the application. I just said there's no work sample or portfolio link that you include. Leeway has something called the experience page. And so, G, if you'll go to the next slide, that'd be great. The experience page is Leeway's way of honoring an applicant's journey and experience as an artist that just isn't bound up in their CV or resume, right? This is especially important for folks who might not have traditional or formal arts education or validation from the academy, whatever that means. But we know that there are lots of folks who don't go through those formal institutions who are 100% artists for social change and always have been. Right. And so these artists, they might not have exhibited in traditional art galleries or have been recognized by these institutions, but they're 100% doing this work. And so Leeway's experience page doesn't just have an upload link for your CV or resume. It has no upload link for any of that, actually. It has what's called an experience page, and it asks for 4 to 10 personal, professional, and/or political experiences that have led you to this work as an artist, right? And this is really a moment to pull the curtain back and let the panel get to know you beyond just traditional resume accolades, right? I always tell folks every part of your application will tell a story, right? And so, what story do you want to tell in your experience page, right? Help paint a picture of how you got to this moment where you're applying for this grant, right? And it can be, I really encourage you to balance the professional and the political and the personal, and to not just recreate a resume here. If we wanted a resume, we'd ask for a resume. And so lean in to doing this experience page in a way that lets the panel get to know you. And if you have the capacity, don't be afraid to be vulnerable. Help the panel build relationship and connect with you so that when they shut the binder or close the tab of reviewing your application, they remember that story that you told them in your experience page. Um, Talie, for your experience page, you had a gorgeous experience page. How did you go about picking some of the things that you included there?
Sure. So for me, this page was really important because I feel like sometimes I'm a little my resume can feel disjointed, you know, like a lot of people know
Mhm.
me because of my day job, a lot of people know me because of my music, and a lot of other people know me because of my media work, and it's very rare that there are people that know all three areas.
Yep.
And it is also where you can also like I feel like this page gives you a really good time to silence the imposter syndrome because
Yep.
you might be someone who dances and and writes poetry and haikus as you dance and you sing. Maybe you're not the best haiku writer, maybe you're not the best dancer, maybe you're not the best singer, but maybe you're the only person on earth that does all three, you know? And so what you're doing here is, so for me, what I really wanted to do with this page is one, really root myself in Philadelphia because Philadelphia is such a very profound part of my work, even though I talk about Haiti a ton. But it is very specific to Philadelphia because I am from Philly and Haiti. I grew up between both places, so I wanted to ground myself in Philadelphia. So I named all the works that really showed my connection to my neighborhood and to North Philadelphia and to West Philadelphia. Um,
Hmm.
to show work that isn't necessarily work. Um,
Hmm.
I think I talked about like the fact that me and my sister throw an annual Haitian Independence Day party. You know,
Hmm.
it is a party I throw, but it is for sure a community event that people have come to like really associate with. Like they've made space for on their calendars every January 1st. It's really community space that we're making. It's not something I would ever put on any resume or my LinkedIn, or you won't find it anywhere. You just know it because my neighbors come, you know?
Totally.
So I was able to talk about that. So like there was things that I wanted to do to make sure I established. I wanted to establish myself in Philadelphia. I wanted to establish myself. I wanted to establish how I've been creating community. And then from there, um, I have ways that I talk about my art. I say that like everything I make is a testament to the cities that made me, Philly and Port-au-Prince.
Mm, mm,
And it is about how um, I'm obsessed with Haitian history and how we can use the arts to come together. And so everything I've done that has a piece of that, I put there. So I talk about concerts I've curated, parties I've hosted, furniture
mm,
projects I've done for my community. I talked about my day job a little bit. Um, so everything from the like things that are there were things that were pretty cookie cutter resume things, but
mhm.
also things that were larger, like that just painted the picture of like, this is the movement I'm trying to make here, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah.
It was so, thank you for lifting up the things like the furniture drives, the party that you host for your Haitian neighbors. Like those things matter, right? Because what that illustrated to the panel was a clear commitment and connection to the communities you were going to engage in this project, right? There was no doubt about your connection to the community, right? Sometimes folks make the assumption that I'm a member of a certain community, thus the community wants me there, right? But what you said was, no, let me tell you, this is how I've been showing up for my community, not just around a project that I'm doing, but around joy and wellness and furniture and whatever it looked like at that time. And then you also balanced it with like, and here are my like chops artistically too. I've organized these concerts, I've written this music, and so on. And so it was a really beautiful balance. I felt like I really got to know you on your experience page. So thank you for it, truly.
It might also help because like art can be a kind of a loner thing. It kind of, like, I know for me, music for a lot of years was just something I did in my bedroom. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so this might offer you a way to be like, well, I'm also this person who moves and breathes and is in relationship with people, even if I'm telling you about this collection of poetry that feels kind of insular. Uh,
Totally. Great advice. I mean, the temptation on these experience pages is to just be too short and not explain why it matters, right? And so you see that it's just like one line, but you actually have 325 characters. I'm going to tell you the exact amount of characters you have, right? And so it's really like 2 to 3 sentences that you have to play with here. And so instead of just saying something like, oh, I went to this conference, this media conference, and that's the end of the sentence, that doesn't really tell the panel anything. It just tells them that you went to a media conference. But if you say, I went to a media conference and it was the first time I got to share my work with other LGBT filmmakers, and your project is about queer and trans voices in film, suddenly there's going to be a thread that you connect for them there, right? And so take the space to explain why it was important and impactful to your artistic career. Next slide, please. Um, In terms of the application questions, there are 6 questions. They're just 6 questions, which is great, but they're deep. And so some of them are more clear cut than others. And so if you take a look at the first one, it's just going to ask you to summarize your Art for Social Change project, right? Really think about sort of the who, what, where, why, and when of the project and what it looks like. Again, you're not going to have a pitch deck to share it with this panel, right? And so really describe the thing that you want to create, right? If you're describing a series of paintings, right? Don't just say, I'm going to create a series of paintings. Well, what kind of paintings, right? Are they acrylic? Are they watercolor? What's the focus or the content of the paintings? Are they large scale paintings? Are they super micro small, right? Is it mosaic? Like really pull back and pretend that you're not the artist creating them and think about what kind of context they might need for the art form, who's involved in it and why, right? Um, you know, if you take a look at the question that follows that, it's what I think is probably the clearest question, which is why is the project important to you? You know authentically why this work is important to you. Otherwise, you would not be taking your time and energy to apply for a freaking grant for it, right? And so there is something that is driven you to this moment today. Help them get a sense of why it's important to you and socioeconomically why it's urgent to fund it at this time, right? There is no such thing as good or bad work, right? Especially for the panelists. There's a lot of love for almost all the applications that come through, right? Oftentimes they're trying to make a hard decision of we have 75 applications, but we only have money to fund 25 of them, right? And so one of the ways in which they think about that is what feels the most urgent to fund today, as they're looking at that application, right? And so why is it urgent and important to you? The third question asks, it pulls on that social change intent that you selected earlier in the application, and it asks, what are the goals of your project, right? You've got some goals in mind. What do you hope happens essentially? And how does your art create action around the social change intention area or areas that you picked earlier in the application, right? It's really thinking about if I selected immigrant justice earlier, the panel's going to want to see how my art seeks to have a goal around changing something in the community for immigrants at large, right? And so keep that in mind as you come into question three. You know, a lot of what we believe here at Leeway is that our job as artists is to imagine solutions and different ways of being in community together so that we can provide not only beauty through our artwork, but actual systemic change at the end of the day, even if it's on a smaller scale. Your art is creating action somehow. We're not asking you to be Beyonce, for better or for worse, however you feel about her, you know? And so, but even if it's a small change, own it, because it will be there. There's a great question in the chat that asks, is there a character limit for these questions as well? Absolutely. It's 1,500 characters, about two paragraphs or one big paragraph, depending on how you see it, but 1,500 characters. And in the application itself, it'll literally give you countdowns of how many characters you have left in the application itself. Question four asks you to define your community and what your relationship is to the communities you'll work with on this project as part of this application, right? So all that question is asking is who are you? What are the different intersections of your identity? That might be, and you get to self-define them. It might be your age, your race, class, ability, gender identity, sexual orientation, the list could go on, right? And then how does that play a role in the project that you're doing and the community that you're working with, right? Five will build on that question. So question five um, will build on that community question and ask, how is that community engaged and impacted through your project, right? So you've defined who you are and what community you're working with and for. And question five will ask, well, how are they engaged and impacted? If your work happens beyond the Philadelphia area, right? Maybe you're traveling to another space to do some of your work. How does that work come back to Philadelphia eventually and impact the local region? We're a hyperlocal funder of the Philadelphia region, and so the panel will be looking for Philly impact. They get that you have to travel and go some other places sometimes. That's no problem, but they'll be asking how does it come back? And then last but not least, they're going to ask for something called a change partner and how your change partner will support you. If the change partner is a new concept for you, it is essentially a person or an organization or a business that can best support your project. There is no one size fits all change partner, only the person who can authentically support you in this work, right? Um, Talie, two questions. You answered those six questions. How did you answer them or start to answer them? And who was your change partner?
Sure. So I find these questions really difficult because I guess my big hang up was that I didn't see a lot of difference between my answers from three to five.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the same question. And so how I approached
Yeah.
it was that I was like, okay. Like if I'm trying to explain to somebody what I'm doing and who I'm doing it for, there is like going to be like, okay, why I want to do this thing, how it was conceived, what it will result in. And that's kind of how I broke down three, four, and five.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, three I just read to y'all. you know,
Hmm.
explain like this is for Haitians, for first and foremost, but Haitians are not the only people who've experienced displacement. So I explained that, and then five explains what their participation in that will result in. You know,
Absolutely.
it's kind of a progression when you think of it that way. Because I know like this is my third time applying for this one. I got to four and five. I was like, this is the same question, Leeway. Um,
Absolutely. I feel you, right?
and that's one of the really the like big confusing thing about applying for grants where like you will be
Hmm.
asked questions that feel like the same question, and so you have to figure out how am I saying what might feel like the same thing without being redundant and boring the panel. And
Hmm.
basically you just gotta have to save some stuff for the next question, right?
Totally.
So
That's an amazing piece of advice. Save some stuff for the next question, right? I
and
sometimes think about it like puzzle pieces, right? Where you're like, okay, I have the whole puzzle, and maybe I move this area here and I move this over here. I love that you call out three, four, and five, right? Because there is like, you're like, okay, this is all asking about the community. What do you want from me? Is it the same question each time, you know? Um, but you just broke it down really beautifully, right? Three is about the goals of the project, what you hope happens as it relates to your social change intents. Four is all about who you are and how your identity influences your work and community. And then five is like how the community is engaged, you know? And so you just literally said that back to me. I wrote it down as you talk, so it's a beautiful way to think about the differences between three, four, and five.
or like think about like how you came to the concept and how your community brought you to that concept.
Mhm.
And then in five, think about like, okay, the literal final product, how does your community contribute to that final product? That's kind of
Totally. And like engagement can look a lot of different ways, right? And so sometimes it looks like engagement with the product that you create. Sometimes it looks like the community's in the process of making the thing with you, you
yeah.
know? And sometimes it looks like both, you know? And so a really beautiful way of breaking that down. Um, a big, Tali, there's a question in the chat for you. It
Sure.
says, what was your call to action?
My I'm not sure there was a call to action. Yeah, I'm not sure there is a call to action. What I have is we've engaged about 10 really amazing women in this project. And all of the musicians, most of the musicians I'm working with are Haitian. And so we're just in this process of like coming together and really learning about each other and learning about our histories and um, I guess our call to action, what we always end with is like, okay, when we find ourselves in this space in Philadelphia, um, it's 2025, Trump is president, Haitians are a target.
Mm.
What is the things that we've learned or passed on from our grandmothers, these things that we don't even know we learned, how are they in service towards our collective liberation? And so
Yes.
we kind of those are kind of the questions that we are exploring. I don't know if I really said that in this
That's a
application.
big ass call to action. I love that. No. And you did say it in this application, right? You read to us earlier that this work was about creating new pathways for the Haitian community, right? Was about traditions, preserving traditions kept lost and learned why migrate it. Those are big calls to action that came through in this application. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I was like, yes, it was in there. Yeah.
And I guess like I have like a very I'm really like as someone who's worked in nonprofits for so long in Philly, like I don't like a lot of mission statements that are like we're transforming lives, we're blah blah blah. And so
Totally.
I really don't say much about like that it's I don't really say much that it's going to upend anything, you know? I'm saying like
Mhm.
with it's offering an opportunity for us to reflect and come together and connect because that's what I can promise.
Yeah.
Um
Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes making space for the certain community to gather and preserve traditions is enough, you
yeah.
know?
Um
Um,
as for my change partner, that was easy because this is a concert that is being presented by Journey Arts. So we are applying we've applied for a lot of funding in partnership with Journey Arts. And so we applied for this grant to pay part of my artist fee for this thing that Journey Arts is presenting with us.
Yeah, and for those not familiar with it, Journey Arts is an arts presenting organization that presents a lot of really beautiful work here in Philadelphia. Gorgeous. We're at 6:33, so I'm going to give the 2 minute like speed read of the rest of this application. So, Gabe, if you could put us to the next slide, which is just about change partners, which we just talked about. Just someone you have built a relationship with that seeks to engage or that seeks to engage with the community it takes place in, or a person, organization, or business that has a connection to the project in some way, shape, or form. Change partners complete 3 questions as part of this application. It is separate from your application, but thinking about a change partner now versus later is really important. Particularly since they've got to answer 3 questions. Those 3 questions are very easy for them. It's how do they know you? How will they support? And what expertise or support will they provide? Right? The big thing about a change partner is they cannot financially benefit. Your change partner cannot be a line in your budget. And so you can't, if the venue you're going to perform your performance piece at is your change partner, you can't have a line in your budget for the venue. You can pay them with other funds. It just can't be a line in this grant application. So just heads up on that. And all that's in the guidelines as well, too, and in the change partner form. Last piece is the budget. There is a very short, simple budget as part of this application. Um, and the thing I'll say about the budget, if you'll go to the next slide, please, it you don't have to list every detail and cent here, right? These are just like buckets of expenses that you might be going through. And this is for work that's yet to happen. And so we're not going to, for lack of a better word, police your budget later at Leeway. We know that it's $2,500. And if you get this funding, we trust you to move it in ways and allocate it in ways that work for you. But the thing to remember about your budget is whatever you talk about in your budget should be talked about in your application somewhere. And so if you are including the cost of a camera in your budget, but you don't talk about why you are even using photography earlier in your application, it is going to be a big disconnect for the panel. And so make sure that your budget can back up and parallel whatever you're talking about in the narrative questions. Even if your budget exceeds $2,500, and it can, there'll be a question that just asks you, what will Leeway's $2,500 support? And do you have any other funding to support this project if it's a $10,000 budget and we can only provide 2,500? Doesn't mean that you have to have other grants. Some people share that they've applied for other grants, and some people are also just like, I'd fund it from my back pocket if I needed to. Some people say, I just don't have other funding yet, and that's totally real. The panel is just curious about how you might meet that gap. So pay attention to what budget, to what sort of story your budget tells, and don't neglect to pay others and pay yourself, because that will also send a message to the panel too, if there's room in your budget to do that. Talie, one of my last questions tonight will be any advice for putting together a quick and dirty budget here?
Yeah, I mean, our budget wasn't very detailed. It was just like, okay, there is a documentary, there is a concert, there's gonna so there's gonna be a venue, there's gonna be so I think we shared like 3 categories of things, but mainly like this budget was because I was like, I would like to be paid a little more to do this, you know what I mean? And so
Mm-hmm.
this is a portion of my artist fee for this thing I've been working on for 2 years. And so yeah, we were like, I think we shared we shared that we've gotten some other funding, which I think funders like that. I think funders like to know that you are making a project that is realistic and is happening. I don't know if that feels off to say, but like I think funders like to hear like this is how this is going to happen and you contributing to this makes it realistic and not like I have this pie in the sky thing that could happen maybe, you know? Uh,
Totally. I think in
and
the scheme of your budget too, where it was like a phase of a larger project, it was really meaningful there. Hmm.
Yeah. So we didn't share much detail at all. I think we shared like 3 things, and then we were like, and then Tally needs to be paid. So $2,500, please, Leeway, could we have it? You know?
It's real. People need to get paid. Artists need to be compensated for their time and their energy. Um, Any last advice to these amazing folks who have given us 7 extra minutes tonight?
Sure. I mean, I would say, I'm gonna talk to you like artist to artist. Like, if you don't get it this year, apply again. There's just like there's only but so many of us Philly artists making. There's only so many times an institution can reject you. You like your turn will come.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I want a soundbite of that so I can just play it over and over to people. Come and get your money, please.
Yeah.
Please. It's important. You only need one yes. There'll be lots of no's likely, but you only need one yes, and let's hope it's Leeway. Okay. Also, someone just said, saw you at World Cafe. It was spiritual. I love that.
Oh, good.
Folks, Talie, thank you so much for sharing your time and your energy and your music with us tonight and just your wisdom in approaching this application. Um, Talie, where can we find your music again, just so we can support you or any upcoming events?
I'm gonna share my Instagram, and I think Instagram directs people, and uh, so this is
Awesome.
Instagram, Miss underscore Talie. So
Thank you. Everyone follow Talie, support Talie's music, practice media, editing, whatever it is that Talie's doing, support it. The application deadline is August 1st at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We accept online applications and hard copies if you're old school and an auntie like myself, lean in. We've got upcoming support sessions on July 11th, 22nd, and 29th, but you can message us anytime or email info@leeway.org and set up a one-on-one support session.